Hey everyone, this is Ben with RegisteredNurseRN.com, and in this video I'm going to give you some tips on how to take notes efficiently in college. And I'm sure that most of you probably already know how to take notes, at least on some level, but it does help to step back and make sure that you're taking advantage of some of these tips. And at the end of the video, if you have any tips that I didn't mention, feel free to add those and it may help some other students out. Okay, so the first thing is you have to decide on the method of note taking that you are going to use. And there are generally three ways that you're going to take notes. Either you're going to do it via a digital method like a laptop or a tablet. You're going to use an old-fashioned method, which is just writing them out as a professor talks with a sheet of notebook paper and a pencil or pen. And then the third method is that a lot of teachers these days are handing out PowerPoint slides that have the notes already there for you. So you literally just sit there and listen to the professor and look at the notes, or they may have blanks in the PowerPoint slides and you fill in a few blanks here and there as they lecture. That's another method. So those are the three main methods: is PowerPoints, handwriting the notes out, or using a digital method. My preferred method, if you can, is handwriting, because most studies show that if you actually have to write it out, that it sticks a little better than when you just have a PowerPoint in front of you or even type, because there's just something about writing and looking at the letters as you write them that it just sticks in your mind. So I would recommend that. If you have terrible handwriting, go ahead and use a laptop, or if you're just a super gadget tech type person and you just like your technology, go ahead and use it if it works for you. But the best method, in my opinion, is writing it out. Secondly, you want to make sure you have the tools of the trade: some pens, pencils, maybe a highlighter or some colored pens if you like to use those. And again, I would recommend loose leaf paper over these type of notebooks. And the reason I say that is because when you use these notebooks, you sort of put yourself in a corner sometimes, because professors might skip around to different chapters. You might want to go home and add some additional notes when you read or skim the textbooks. And so it can be hard to keep track of all of them. And if you have them in loose leaf format, then you can just take what's important and keep the chapters together from your note taking from the textbook, your note taking from the professors, and so forth. I just find it easier to organize that way into a folder or a 3-ring binder, but you can do whatever you want. Couple other things real quick is that if you have a hearing problem or a vision problem, you want to sit towards the front of the classroom so that you can make sure you can hear the professor or see the board or the presentation, whatever they use. And then secondly, you always want to ask questions. If you ever have trouble understanding, or maybe you misheard a professor, always don't be shy to raise your hand and ask them to repeat that or to elaborate on a phrase. They will usually be happy to do that. Now, whenever you go to take notes, number one thing that everyone always says is you do not want to write everything word for word. That's inefficient. It's going to give you a lot more material to try to study, and you don't want that. Instead, you want to pull out and extract the key concepts of the lecture. So let's say, for example, that the professor's talking, they're like, okay, class, now I'm going to tell you about the 3 major different types of muscles in the body. And these are found in all humans, and la-da-da-da-da. Here are the 3 types of muscles: cardiac, skeletal, and smooth muscle. Well, you don't want to write all that stuff out. You just want to write 3 muscle types: skeletal, smooth, cardiac. There you go. It's short, it's sweet, it gives you the gist of the information you need to know. Of course, you're going to want to use numbers. Instead of writing out the word 3, you just write a 3, and also use like little abbreviations like the little and symbol. That will help you to write quicker, especially if you have one of those professors and they cover a lot of material really quickly. So that way you can just jot that out. Another thing is I would discourage you from writing out abbreviations for words that you don't commonly use. It's okay to use an abbreviation like the word "the" or something like that. It's okay to use abbreviations for just common words, but whenever they're lecturing, try not to abbreviate the words that they're saying, because you'll tend to forget. Now, if you have a professor that's just going really fast, what I would recommend is take out a sheet of paper or write at the top of your paper a key and shorten up terms and know exactly what's going to be covered in the class, so that way you can write quicker. So let's say you're going into the lecture and the professor is going to be talking about the muscular system, and you know that's what they're going to be talking about. You could write out an M with a period after it, and you could write an equal sign and say that abbreviation means muscles, or maybe an S and that equals skeletal. So that way, as you're writing notes, if you need to abbreviate, you can do so, and you have a key at the top for that particular lecture, so you know what those words mean, and that will help you to write quicker. Now, Another thing is that some people, especially people like my wife, for example, like to use different colors as they switch to different chapters or different topics or different definitions or something like that. That can help you as you're reading it and restudying it. You don't have to do that, but some people like to do that. So if you're one of those people, you can buy you a couple different colored pens and switch it up here and there just to help you know when the content changes. And also try to use bullet points, use neat handwriting, of course, that's a given, but use bullet points, use spaces, underline, circle things, especially when a teacher says this phrase. Now, this is really important, or you may see this again. That's tipping you off. Hey, this is probably going to be on the test. So always make sure, put an asterisk, underline the whole thing, circle it, highlight it, do something, because you're saying, okay, really focus on this, and maybe go back in the book and read a little bit more about it because it's important details. Then another important thing is that you want to compare your notes with other classmates if you have the opportunity. And this is where it can pay off. Let's say you get to class and the professor waits 5 or 10 or 15 minutes before class begins to wait for everyone to get in there. You may want to reach over to a classmate and say, hey, do you mind if we kind of compare notes so I make sure I didn't miss anything? Because you would be surprised at how people really hear and interpret things differently, even in the same lecture. And when you compare notes, you can find some things you miss sometimes, or maybe they wrote it in a way that's easier to understand. And so you can help each other out in that way. And then the last tip I would give you on taking notes is that you want to rewrite or reread the notes after you get home for that day, because studies have shown you're going to forget a vast majority of what you just heard in lecture class and what you took notes on unless you review it. So review it by taking your notes, read it out loud, repeat it a few times, maybe even rewrite it out if you made a lot of abbreviations, so that when you go to study it won't be as difficult. So especially if you're a read-write type learner, rewrite the notes in your own words. That really helps. And again, my wife did a video on the different learning types, so you want to watch that and apply that for your note reviewing. Now, as you set up your notes, there's one thing that I would absolutely recommend every single person in the world do when you take notes on a notebook sheet of paper. You want to put your name on the paper somewhere. You want to put a date somewhere for each day that you're taking the notes. You want to cover each chapter, and if they change it up, let's say they cover 2 or 3 chapters in one single lecture, write it each time on, chapter 1, and then when they start chapter 2, write chapter 2, and then underneath that you'll know everything's for chapter 2. That really helps when it comes time to review for tests. Then write at the top which exam this is going to be. This material is going to correspond to. So for example, let's say chapters 1 through 5 are going to be for exam 1. So for every new notebook sheet of paper, write exam 1 at the top, so you'll know when it comes time to study for exam 1, these are all the notes you need. Also, write out the topics that you're going to be covering. So chapter 1, exam 1, and this topic is going to be on the muscle system. And then finally, number each page on your notes at the bottom or at the top corner or something. Just put a 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, that way if they get mixed up, you know the order they go in, and it's going to help you stay so much more organized. And I said this in my other video on staying organized, but it's really important to put those in a folder or a 3-ring binder as you complete your notes, so that they're all there and you can review them. You know exactly where they're at, they're organized. And I would staple it together every time a professor finished a section or an exam. So let's say all the notes for exam 1 were completed and then the professor moved on to exam 2. I would go home and I would staple all those exam 1 notes, so I had a little packet. That was my study packet, and that's how I would do that. So those are some tips on how to take notes in college or nursing school or whatever your major is. Hope that helps. If you have anything to add or anything that particularly helps you, please feel free to share that in the comment section, and please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. Thank you so much.